This is the second part of Topic A, starting on page 5 at the bottom, the Access 2019 application window. The Access application window displays application features that enable you to create, enhance, and manage Access databases. The application provides features to input, store, and output data, and lets you import and export data from and to external applications. The application window also provides you with access to the integrated help feature, which provides instructive support on using Access. So here I have an Access file open, and right now the file's open, but I have no individual objects open right now. So when you open database objects, and these are all listed in what we call our navigation pane to the left here, and they're broken up between different sections. There are types of objects, which we have tables, queries, we have forms, and also reports. So when I open these individual objects, and you do that by double clicking on them, so if I double click on table inventory, you can see they open as tabbed sheets to the right in your main document area. So right now I have table inventory open. If I was to open up table suppliers by double clicking, again, it just adds another tab here. I still have both objects open, and you can just move back and forth between the two of those. You can have multiples open going across. You can open it pretty much as many as your computer's memory can hold there. So we're just going to go through some of our different interface elements. You'll be familiar with a lot of these because they're relatively the same as our other applications, again with some additional features for this new program. And just so you know, if you ever need to close out any of your different objects, if I right click on my tab name, I have the option to close here. So that will just close that one selected tab. But if you have multiple open, you can always select close all. It will close all the tabs in your document area. But again, the file is still open, just those individual objects are closed. That's important to know. Okay, so our different interface elements, like I mentioned, this is your navigation pane to the left, and this is a list that displays objects in the database, again, including your tables, queries. Scroll down, we have our forms and reports. So, navigation pane. In the top left-hand corner, we have what we know as our quick access toolbar, a small button panel that contains commonly used commands, and we know that this is customizable. Down at the bottom of our application window, another familiar is our status bar. The bottom panel of the application window that displays information about the application and currently selected database object. And it provides options for viewing the currently selected database object. So you can see right now I have my table inventory open. It tells me that I am in data sheet view. To the right here, it allows me to switch between data sheet view and design view, which we will learn about in just a few minutes. All right, so it'll give you some extra information about the different objects that you have open on screen. And then up at the top of our application window, we know this as our title bar, and this will tell you the name of the file, which is the open database that you currently have accessed at this point. All right. So again, a lot of familiar ones. Only one that's new to you probably is that navigation pane to the left. And of course, we all know our ribbon, our major toolbar of command buttons, and those are broken down by tabs into command groups. Within each group, we have our commands. All right, so our objects in Access databases, the four that we'll be going through are tables, and your tables store data in rows and columns. So we saw our table inventory, It's kind of set up kind of like an Excel spreadsheet. You have your rows, you have your columns. Then we have forms. I'll open up form inventory. This provides a graphical interface for modifying data in tables. So this form inventory has all the different fields just for easy input of information. And this information is input into the table that it's associated with. So if I was to make a new record for form inventory, I can enter it here, but it will actually show up in table inventory. So it's just for speedy entry of information. Then we have our queries, and these transform data in tables, such as sorting a table by certain parameters. So we have different queries that are already created here. Let's see. One that we'll look in our activity query project packs will also be creating this. This is a query that just filters down the data from table inventory. It takes all the product codes that start with the PAK prefix and only shows those. So you can quickly run these different queries, just again by double clicking on them, and then it will filter down that data. That's just one example of a query though. We'll get into many other forms as we go through our course. And then our last type of object is our reports, and these just provide a streamlined way of viewing your data. They make it better for printing out your information. Let me open one up here real quick. My application always freezes a little bit before I open a report here. Here we go. So you can see this is just a better way to print out your information. Much more aesthetically pleasing, if you will. All right, so those are your 4 types of objects that we'll be working with: tables, forms, queries, and reports. All right, I'm going to close out my form inventory. So I'm going to switch over to that, right-click, close that. I'm going to close out of query project packs. Again, right-click, close that. And lastly, I'm going to close out of report list of orders, right-click, and close that. This is going to leave me with my table inventory. All right, so a table is a storage container that stores related data in rows and columns. Rows display information about each item in the table. Columns display categories in the table. The table has a header row with a descriptor for each column going across the top. So you can see our header row has product code, department, supplier ID, item description, units in stock, so on and so forth. And I can scroll to the right here to see additional columns. All right, just some quick terminology related to our tables. We have a record. A record is a row of data which contains a complete set of data for a single entry. For example, a record might contain all related information for a business contact, including their name, address, phone number, and so forth. So a record in this particular table inventory, Bath HW32, that's the bathroom department, Maloof supplier ID, item description, 5 units in stock. So it's a complete row in your table. That is what a record is. And then a field is going the opposite direction. Field is going to be a whole entire column. So this contains a single data element within a record. For example, a record meant to hold data about a rectangle might hold 3 fields, such as height, width, and the rectangle's unique ID. So your fields here, you have product code, you have department field, supplier ID field, so on and so forth. So every single column here. And then a value is a single data value held within a field. For instance, for, let's say, the Hinge 15 product code, what is the department for that? That's hardware. So a value is one single cell of information. It's where a row and a column meet. We know in Excel, one individual entity here is called a cell. And that's the same idea in Access as well. All right. Now down at the bottom of our table view of table inventory, you can see this little toolbar at the bottom here. This is what we call our record navigation bar. This provides controls that you can use to navigate among records. It can be used to navigate records while viewing tables, forms, and queries. All right, so we have a few buttons here. I'll show you in my table inventory. If I hover over, I can get my screen tip of what this button is. This will jump you to your first record. So you can see it brought me up to Bath HW2. This one right here, this is your last record. So that will jump you to the bottom, your last entered record. Here we have our previous record. You can see it brings me up one, win double 8217. This will bring you to your next record. So it brings you down one. And then this one with the star next to it, this is your new blank record. I'm just going to scroll down before selecting that. You can see I have an empty row here in my data sheet view with a little star next to it. That means your row, your next row. I mean, it's just a row that's ready to take new information, take a new record into it. So this is your new record. When I click on that, you can see it jumps me to that, and I'm ready to enter more information for a brand new record here. Okay. There's two types of databases in Access, flat and relational databases. And flat databases contain a single table of data, where relational databases contain multiple tables of data that relate to each other through certain key fields. For instance, let me show you something. You can see here in table inventory, we know we have our product code, department, supplier ID, item description, and product code. This information is just typed in as we know it, whatever product codes we have for our company. We have certain departments, again, that are just entered there. Now, as far as supplier ID goes, this is actually chosen from another table in our database. Remember, database is the whole entire file, but we can have multiple tables inside of our database. Here I have a table called Table Suppliers. This lists every individual supplier or vendor for my company that I get products from. And you can see each one is only listed once. Every record needs to have a unique value. So I can't have two supplier IDs with the same name here. Just like in table inventory, I can't have two products that have the same product code. It just wouldn't make sense for me. But this is a relational database because these two tables are related to each other through the supplier ID field. Whatever supplier ID I choose for a product or wherever I'm buying them from needs to be listed somewhere in this list of supplier IDs. Okay, that's why they're related to each other. It's only an option of that supplier ID being listed in this table. I can't just have a random supplier ID without having their information in the table of suppliers. So we'll get into it a little more of how this works, of creating the relationship, but just know they are connected through that particular field of supplier ID. Just quickly to show you, again, don't get discouraged if you don't understand this right now, because we will get into this further. But just showing you how the relationship shows here. You can see table inventory, And table suppliers, I have two field code lists here. Just trying to resize them for you so you can get a better look. There we go. It's very hard to get precisely on that corner to resize it. Come on. Just does not want to resize. Alright, anyway, I was just trying to show you. But all of these fields are the columns that come from those two tables. So you see we have product code, department, supplier ID, item description. Those are your column headers in the tables. Table suppliers, we have supplier ID, first name, last name, contact phone, so on and so forth. And those are listed in the box for table suppliers. And you can see between these two field lists, we have this connecting line. Again, we'll touch upon this, not touch upon it, we'll learn it much more in depth as we go along, just touching upon it right now. And this connecting line, you can see it connects from supplier ID in my table inventory, and it goes to the other side, right next to the field supplier ID in table suppliers. So that is where these two tables are related, through that field. And the notation on these lines, this is a little infinity symbol, like a sideways 8. And then on the table supplier side, we have a number 1. What this means, for supplier ID and table inventory, we can have many of the same table suppliers listed in that table. Because remember, we can get many different products from the same supplier. So they can be listed many times in this table, but in table suppliers has to be a unique value. We cannot have them listed more than once there. Okay? Again, we'll get into it much more in depth, but I just wanted to give you a quick peek at that for now. All right. Real quick, I'm just going to go over more parts of the ribbon for those new students who have not encountered any of our previous Microsoft applications yet. So I just want to go more in depth on the ribbon, backstage view, and your different components like your ribbon tabs and groups before I end this video. We know the ribbon is a graphical menu panel that appears at the top of the application window. Tabs are organized in groups related to the type of task being performed, and each tab is further divided into groups of related commands. So we all know we have our ribbon tabs along the top here. Right now we have our File tab, which always accesses what we call our backstage view. And then we have our Home tab. This is for opening, saving, publish, printing, and closing a database. It also displays, sorry, that was for my File tab, obviously, for creating a new one, opening, saving, and printing, closing your database. Then we have our Home tab for basic formatting and search options, as well as functional groups such as view, sort, and filter, and records that are oriented towards specific types of work you will perform in Access objects. Our Create tab for creating new database objects such as tables, queries, forms, and reports. External tab for enabling you to move large amounts of data into and out of Access. And then your Database Tools tab for enabling you to perform certain type of database-wide tasks. Also, when you have specific objects open, such as a table, you will get contextual tabs, just like we've seen for our other applications. When we're working with a picture, we get contextual tabs in those programs. So when we're working in our tables in Access, we do get additional tabs as well. If I were to close that table out, you can see those contextual tabs will disappear. All right, and we know First we have our ribbon tab, then each tab is divided into our command groups. For instance, we have our sort and filter command group on our home tab, and then within each command group we then have our individual commands. Some commands are just buttons, some may be drop-down menus, like delete, and then you have your commands from those drop-down menus. All right, so very similar to our other applications. And then we all know we have dialog box launchers, which are those diagonal pointing arrows in the bottom right-hand corner of specific command groups. And your dialog box launchers just open dialog boxes with additional commands and options on them. So we'll get into different options that we can perform with those. Your next video will be activity 1-2 on page 9.